Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. Thank you so much for joining us for our second episode. We are now live. We're going to be coming to you live from Tenerife in the Canary Islands. So the DARWIN200 has made some pretty good progress since it left Plymouth in the UK, and we had our first launch event. In fact, I'm going to share my screen really quickly now, and I am going to show you the map so we can take a little look at the progress that the DARWIN200, the Oosterskalde, has made so far. So you know that we left Plymouth and then spent 10 days sailing on the ocean, a little pause in Spain to avoid a little bit of weather. And then if you visit DARWIN200.com, you can follow this incredible virtual map and you can see what's happening along the way. So you can see the ship is now here in Tenerife in the Canary Islands. But what's really cool is all along the way, we're uploading these little photos and little video clips. So you can kind of follow along with the Oosterskalde and you can see some of those videos, some of those pictures coming in real time and really be part of this really exciting expedition. So I'm going to come back from that screen share now. You can find that map at DARWIN200.com. And as I mentioned, the ship is now in Tenerife. It took 10 days to get there, and I'm going to share a little video clip so you can watch a few little segments of the ship arriving here in Tenerife. So the Oosterskalde is now moored in Tenerife. There is so much going on right now between the conservation projects. The first Darwin leaders are on board and working on their projects right now. And the perfect person to bring in to talk to us a little bit about that is Stu McPherson, the expedition leader. He's also going to share a story about Darwin's almost visit to Tenerife. So let's bring Stu in with us right now. Hey, Stu, how you doing today?
Hello, it's lovely to speak to you, Joe. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you. Looks like a beautiful sunny day.
It is
from the UK, and now you are here, and I know there's so much going on.
There absolutely is. So we're in Santa Cruz Harbor here in Tenerife. The Darwin leaders and the ship have been here for about 5 days now, 4 or 5 days, and they've been doing some incredible work. I'll tell you about it in a second, but just quickly, I wanted to quickly relay the story of Darwin visiting this area. So the ship, as you may recall from last week, set sail from Plymouth in the south coast of England and was sailing down the Atlantic. And they really wanted to land at Tenerife to resupply and get some supplies here. Unfortunately, as the ship got closer, Darwin saw it emerge on the horizon. He was really seasick on the ship and didn't enjoy his time really on the ship at all. So when he saw the islands emerge on the horizon, you can imagine how excited he was and how desperately he wanted to get ashore. Sadly, though, as the ship got closer, the message was dispatched to the ship that no foreign ships were allowed to land. There was a cholera epidemic, an outbreak in Europe at the time, in mainland Europe and the British Isles. So sadly, Darwin's ship and the crew and all the other ships in the area at the same time weren't allowed to land. This broke Darwin's heart. You have to imagine that as a little boy, he'd seen drawings of tropical animals and plants like palm trees and orchids. And unlike today, where you could buy one for $5 or £5 or €5 at a grocery store down the road, this was not possible in Darwin's time. You've got to remember, he only knew the tropical wildlife from pictures. So he was so heartbroken he couldn't get ashore. And he actually wrote about it in later life, how he always regretted never coming to Tenerife. They had to pass the islands by and set sail for the next location, which is Cape Verde, which is where this ship is going in literally about 4 days' time. It leaves on Sunday. Very quickly, you're going to meet the Darwin leaders next week. We've got 5 Darwin leaders doing amazing projects here. One of them is one Darwin leader and their accompanying camera operator have been studying short fin pilot whales, and you're going to hear a little bit about that from a conservationist later. Another is studying the incredible dragon trees and thermophile forest around the island. Another one is studying the laurel forests. Another one is looking at the endemic birds. Another one is looking at the reptiles and the coastal habitats around the island. So those are coming up. We're going to do that next week. Each one is making 3 films.
All right. Awesome, Stu. So we are going to connect with some conservationists in Tenerife. And I know we're going to connect with Jaime first. He was backstage while you were talking, but I just lost him. He just disappeared. So hopefully he will be able to come back and join us live. But in the meantime, why don't we just push forward? We'll talk to Natacha first. So why don't you introduce Natacha and we will learn a little bit about the amazing work she's doing. We'll see if Jaime can join us in a few minutes.
Hello, nice to be here in this beautiful boat. I am a researcher, a whale researcher, working in the Canary Islands, but have the luck to work also in the US with sperm whales, in New Zealand with Brudis whales. But in general, my specialty are deep diving whales. So this is a sperm, pilot, beaked whales, animals that spend most of their time underwater.
All right, excellent. So we have a little video that we're going to play in just a moment, but maybe if you could briefly just tell us what a typical day of work might look for you when you're in the field, what that might look like.
Well, it is exhausting and beautiful. So we go out at sea, depends where we are working. Sometimes, for example, if we do a survey of whales, we just go in a boat and we go out at sea for days, and we deploy a hydrophone behind the boat and find the whales and then go and take data from them. But some other times, like when we are tagging, which is the video that you are going to see, in those cases, we leave for the day, we find the whales from land, then because these whales are so difficult to see that we need a land team, and in El Hierro it's possible to do so in the Canarias because there are very high cliffs near the water. And then we approach the whales very slowly, nicely, and deploy, when they allow us, a tag in their back. And we also take data on photo ID to know who they are and how many there are here and many other data. Then we come back, pass the data, cook dinner, make a nice meeting in the night, and ready for wake up early next day and do the same.
All right, I can see how those are definitely busy days. Let's get into that video. Natacha, when you want me to turn the volume up a little bit, just let me know, and we can let you narrate a little bit over the video as well. So let's get that video sharing. Here we go.
This video is amazing, you'll see, because not too many people have seen these whales, beaked whales with a beak, a very long beak, in real life. They are like the fairies of the sea because they spend something like 92-95% of their time underwater.
All right, well, let's get that video playing. Here we go.
How?
La DTAG es una marca que se pega con ventosas al
This
lomo
is
de
a
los
DTAG.
animales.
It's the instrument that we deploy on the whale using the suction cups. This is the way they attach to the whale. And you see the antenna in behind my hand. That was the radio to find the tag again, because we don't leave it in the water. So we put them in this way. This is a shot of Blainville's beaked whales, one of the 23 species of this family. They are all very deep divers, and very little is known of them. So we use this small boat, we call it ROAS, and this is the land station. We have large binoculars and small binoculars to find the whales. It's a team. Okay, now this person has seen the whales and is telling the data on the magnetic angle and the reticle, which is a line in the binoculars that tell us the angle of the sighting with respect to the horizon. With that data, the computer is able of knowing where the animals are, and we are sending by radio our position to the computer also. So they tell the boat, okay, here you go, it is 1K to the whales go. Here we are trying to attempt to tag it. So maybe you can raise the volume now. This was for a documentary on National Geographic, and that's why they put this adventure music. It's very difficult to touch these whales. Imagine, you only have 2 minutes at the surface. Wow, and here it was achieved.
Success. A male has been tagged. When it surfaces, the tag signals its location to Natacha's team, who track it day and night, on land and at sea. After more than 24 hours, the tag is released, and Natacha can recover it from the water. Thanks to the precious data gathered by the tag, Natacha can quickly reconstruct the Blainville's beaked whale's movements and sounds with incredible precision.
Un sitio de Blainville descansa
So
en
this is an
superficie
animation
unos 5
that was done by the company who made the documentary, which is called St. Thomas Production. It's a French company, and they made this documentary for National Geographic Arte. And look at this the beautiful coast of one of the islands of the Canaries called El Hierro, where these whales, big whales, approach the coast because look at the cliffs near the coast. Well, the depth of the water is same impressive.
And shed some
So,
light on this dark world.
raise the volume now, Joe, please.
Cuando encuentran una presa que les gusta,
Okay.
pasan de la fotografía
So,
acústica, que son los
thank you, Joe.
chasquidos, al vídeo acústico.
So you
que son
hear,
chasquidos emitidos
well,
por
you
una
could hear
alta
in the
tasa
video,
de repetición. Y esto les
if we will
permite
hear it all the sound,
seguir a la
some
presa con
clicks.
mayor precisión
This is the way
y
they look for
velocidad.
food. This is an animation. This is not the real thing. Nobody has seen a big whale going deep like this. Imagine that they are diving at 1,000 meters. The maximum of a big whale is 3,000 meters, 3 kilometers underwater. So they are forging the incomplete darkness. When they are 1,000 meters deep, remember that the pressure increases and they have something like 100 kilos per square centimeter of their body. So the whale is foraging using these echoes, the echolocation using sound to find their prey, choose their prey, and then using a buzz to attempt to capture it. You can, and then when it goes up to the surface, then it does recovery dives. Recovery dives, you can maybe raise the volume again, Joe, or last.
Taking several 20-minute naps to recover before their next deep dive to feed. Natacha will soon find out if they have set a new diving record.
Okay, that was the video. Thank you, St. Thomas Productions. It was a beautiful image that they saw, this animation. And that was the life of a big whale. It's been underwater. Will you mind me to do a little game with the people who are listening?
Sure. What would you like to do?
Invite them to be a big whale for a second, or any deep diving whale.
All
Okay.
right.
Okay, so we are at the surface. We have to dive down there to find food, and we only have one diving bottle, and that is our body. So we need to replenish our body with all the oxygen we can load. And that will be not only loaded in the blood and in the lungs, like in other terrestrial mammals, it will be loaded in the muscles. That's why the meat of the whales is so black, because it's full of myoglobin that stores the oxygen in the muscles. So they replenish the full body. You are replenishing. You are resting at the surface, breathing as much as you can and replenishing your body. Now you are ready to dive. So you do, straight down, close your eyes, because you are leaving the light up there. You are now looking down. You're leaving sounds, leaving light up there, and you are starting to feel colder and colder because the temperature of the water goes down in the Canaries from some 20 degrees at the surface to some 7 degrees at 1,000-meter depth. So you are going down to colder waters, every time, the water density increases just a little bit, and you are feeling, and still you have to find prey down there. So now you click, so you are only seeing your prey with your ears when they come back with echoes. And that's how you go clicking, breathing. You are consuming the least possible to endure more in the dive and find more prey. And finally, when you find a prey you like, you meet a buzz that is many clicks together. You go from the photo to the video in sound, and because the prey can react very quickly. And then you need to have many updates of the position of the prey. And that's it. Then you eat many times. If you are big tool, some 30 times per dive. And now you go up to the surface, little by little. You see the light up there. And then your lungs expand again. You break the surface. Welcome to the sun.
Amazing, Natacha. I think our audience tuning in felt like they were a beaked whale there doing a dive and hunting for their prey. Now, before we let you go, Natacha, I would love to play a couple of the little sound clips you shared with me. I have those ready to play. And then we're going to switch over to Jaime, who I can see is backstage, and they're out in the field waiting for us. So we're going to go out onto the island into the field. So we'll be right with you, Jaime. So before we switch over there, I want to play these little clips, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about what we're listening to, Natacha. So I'm going to queue up the first one. And the first one is, here it is. So this one is called Sprint. So let's listen to this one.
Collocation, please. The whale is picking up. It's a pilot whale. There is a cheetah over the tree. We're talking about it in another slide. It's picking up to catch a prey. One of the prey is the giant squid. So this is opposite to Victor. This is also a deep diver, but instead of relying on endurance long dives, this animal pilot will rely on speed. This is the bus, so they are attempting to catch the prey here. So these are like the cheetahs of the deep sea, and Victors are like the camels of the deep sea. And these are the collocation clicks recorded with that tag that we put on the back of the animals.
All right, very cool. An amazing tool to be able to follow along where the whales go, but also to be able to listen to their sounds as well. Well, Natacha, it was so great to get a chance to spend some time with you, to hear a little bit about the work you're doing. Now we're going to jump to another conservationist live in the field. So Natacha, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. And remember that the deep oceans are there and they need to be preserved against deep sea mining and many other things. So if you anytime have a opportunity to sign against deep sea mining, do. It's important. Cheers.
All right, absolutely. Stu, I know you are going to make a little speed run for us for a special surprise, but I'm going to join Jaime in the field now, and we're going to learn a little bit about some of the plant life. All right, let's bring Jaime in with us right now. All right, so joining us live from the field. Hi, Jaime, how are you?
Very well. Sorry that we couldn't connect earlier, but we are very high. We are close to 2,000 meters, and sometimes the signal is not very good. So we were inside a lava tube. We have been filming there with my friends Tom and Elliot, that they come all the way from the United Kingdom as part of the DARWIN200 project. And now we are here very close to this fantastic pine forest that is at my back. The pine is an unbelievable being, because it's resistant not only to the fires, but a high amount of volcanic gases. During the volcanic eruption of La Palma, the pine resists a high concentration of gases. And because of that, we know it's very well adapted to the natural history of Canary Islands. So you know that the Canary Islands are 8 islands. They are very close to the biggest desert on the world, that is Sahara Desert. So we get a lot of episodes of Saharan dust. And the volcanic, the islands are volcanic. They are absolutely volcanic, all of them. So they are layers of volcanic material coming from the bottom of the sea. And for example, Tenerife is 7,500 meters high from the bottom of the sea. So it's the third volcanic edifice in the world, the third higher volcanic edifice in the world. So we have just visited the Teide National Park that is in the center. Is one of the most important environmental protected areas is on the island. And this volcano is really impressive. For many centuries, people from all over the world, especially people traveling from Europe to America or going to the south part of Africa and cross the Canarian seas, thought that the Teide was the highest peak in the world. So that's it's obviously wrong, because we know now that the Everest is the highest peak, but in the past many people thought that. But the Canary Islands, that some people consider the Galapagos of the Atlantic because of their outstanding natural values, attract the interest of many scientists all over the world. For example, the father of the modern geography, Alexander, and he just described the different layers or the different floors of vegetation, you know, and every floor is a different ecosystem. From the coast, we have the coastal ecosystem made by basically by species that are resistant to the salt and very warm conditions. Some species are associated to the sand, and then if we are ascending, we have a kind of a garden of euphorbias. Euphorbia, they are beautiful plants. Some of them are similar to cactus, but they are not. And then as we are ascending, we have a forest of thermophilic forest that is actually a friend of the warm temperatures. We have the fantastic dragon tree in this ecosystem, and we have also the Canarian palm tree that is worldwide famous. After that, the thermophilic, we have in the north coast, we have Monteverde or laurel forest, and laurel forest is a relictic forest. That means that forest covers the coast of the Mediterranean Sea, the European coast and the African coast many million years ago, but at around 4 million years ago, that forest disappeared from the Mediterranean Sea and only remains in Canary Islands, in Madeira, and in Azores Island. By the way, Canary Islands is part of what we call Macaronesia in Greek. That means islands of happiness, because the Romans and the Greeks consider that in Canary Islands you have the garden of the beauties, you know. So the vegetation, we have several similarities with Madeira and Azores Island. And in this case, this laurel forest, we share it with Madeira and a little bit with Azores. Above the laurel forest, we have the pine forest you are watching at my back. Is from 800, 900 meters above until 1,200, 1,400 meters. And then we have the high mountain ecosystem that is exclusive only of two islands of the Canarian archipelago, that is Tenerife and La Palma. And you have to imagine that the island of Tenerife is quite old. The eldest part of it is 11.6 million years old in the southwest of the island, Barranco del Infierno. And then we have another part that is quite old, is Anaga, that is between 7 and 9 million years. And then we have Teno, very close to where we are in the west, that is between 5 and 8 million years. Because of that long period, you have to imagine the amount of volcanic eruptions we have had and the amount of volcanic material that has piled to form the island. Basically, we have two main types of volcanic materials. We have pyroclast, that is a small fragment that the volcanoes expel, and they travel up from the vent. They are quite light, and some of them are very, because the size of the grain is very small, they can travel to many kilometers, you know? And then we have the lava. The lava is a more solid material that actually are expelled by the volcano, but go down the slope, you know, and it's a mixture of a solid material that is not able to melt, liquid material that is melted on the magma, and then the third component is a lot of gas. The gas is the main trigger of the volcanic eruption. Whenever you have the magmatic chamber completely full of material and with a lot of gas, you have the volcanic eruption. The last volcanic eruption in Tenerife was in 1909, but the last in Canary Islands was in 2021, and it was in La Palma, in an island that is very close to Tenerife, and I was working in that volcanic eruption for 60 days. It lasts at around 83 days. I was working there for 60 days with people from all over the world, volcanists, people specialize in volcanoes from other places, many places in the world, more than 1,000. And it was a really good laboratory to understand the volcanic eruptions. On the other hand, it was bad because a lot of people lose their properties and they suffer a lot of damage. So, I mean, that's two sides of the volcanic activity. You have a construction site that is actually very good. Without the volcanoes, we wouldn't be able to live in Tenerife. But on the other hand, you have the destruction side that is not actually very good. So, I mean, we have to live with it. We have to learn how to live with volcano. In the foundation, we spend, quite a few time going to schools, teaching the people about volcanoes and teaching about the menaces and the opportunities. But we also spend a long time teaching people from everywhere how to behave or giving the right values to behave in Canary Islands. Because we receive, you are not going to believe this, kids and girls, we receive 5 million tourists every year. Our population in the island is 1 million persons, but we receive 5 million tourists every year. So that's a lot. And as you can understand, a lot of people behave very well, but other people don't know very well about our outstanding values. So we actually organize campaigns. We go to schools like the places where you are, and we actually teach the young generations how to understand how important are the natural values of Canary Islands. And we also make campaigns for public in general and for the tourism sector. Canary Islands receive 15 million tourists every year, so you can imagine that is a lot in an archipelago that is only 7,500 kilometers square. We are pretty close to the size of Galapagos, but Galapagos has 25,000 people. Canary Islands has 2 million people. So you can imagine that put a lot of pressure in the territory. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope that you find this quite interesting. Okay?
Jaime, thank you so much for that information about the Canaries and the volcanic activity on the islands, and of course why the conservation work that you're doing is so important with so many people living on the islands and then so many millions and millions of tourists visiting every year. So you mentioned a species of plant or the endemic euphorbia, and I have a couple little video clips here of some of those euphorbia that are kind of cactus looking here that Stu shared with me. So I'm going to play that really quickly, and then maybe you can tell me a little bit about what we're seeing here, the plants that we're seeing. So I'm going to play this little video here.
Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, you can see there that one that is like a chandelier is Euphorbia canariensis, and the Aboriginal population used them for fishing, because the latex that contains that is a toxic. You can see that it's similar to a cactus, but it's not a cactus, and has a lot of thorns on it, and it's an adaptation to avoid the herbivorize the goats and other animals to eat them. You can see also other types of plants like palos, Plocama pendula, that are actually, the root is very, very deep and can get the humidity from the soil, because as you can see, it's a very dry landscape. So you need that the plants should be adapted to that. So this is a fantastic garden of euphorbias in the southeast of Tenerife that is called Malpaís Wimar. It's a fantastic place.
And those plants that we were just seeing, Jaime, are they endemic to the Canaries?
Absolutely endemic. Yeah, the chandelier one is endemic of practically the seven of the 8 Canary Islands.
All right, so found nowhere else in the world. That's pretty amazing. Jaime, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today and share, you know, some of the work you're doing and give us a little kind of overview of the Canary Islands. They're a beautiful place, and I hope to be able to visit one day, and hopefully many of our students can as well.
Well, you know that you have your home here, and really, I really appreciate the work you are doing worldwide. It's really impressive, and we are really, really happy with the visit of Darwin 200 project to Tenerife. So anytime you want to come, you are welcome, and thank you very much for your time, and over everything, thank you very much for being so passionate about your work. Thank you very much.
All right, Jaime, thank you so much. We're going to tuck you backstage for now. And now we come to the point where we're going to play a little Kahoot action together. So hopefully you were paying attention during Natacha's little talk about the conservation work she's doing with the beaked whales. And then, of course, we had Jaime talking about the canaries and some of the plant species. So I am going to share my screen here, and we're going to get this Kahoot quiz started live. Now, I know this might be new to some classrooms. It might be new to some people who are tuning in. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the Kahoot quizzes work and what it takes to join in and get in on the action. So really easy to join us. You have to visit kahoot.it. You can see that little address up at the top, kahoot.it, and then it's going to ask you for a PIN number. 985443 is our game PIN for today. If you are joining at your desk and you have your own technology, maybe an iPad, maybe a Chromebook, you can join individually, or your teacher could pop this up at the front of the room and you could yell out your answers to him or her. If you are joining at home or you're using a mobile device or a tablet, you could even scan that QR code and it'll bring you right into the Kahoot. So there are 5 questions today, 20 seconds to answer each question. There's some multiple choice. There is some true and false. And then the quicker you get that answer in, the more points you're going to get. So you get points if the answer is right. You get even more points if you get the answer in really quickly. But if you get the answer wrong, there is no points for you. So you can see we have our auto-generated animal names. We've got the great ibex. We've got the aquatic bee. We've got the purple snail, the fast lizard. And we still have a few more students joining us. You can join individually, you can join as a whole class, whatever works for you. And then really important, at the end of this, if you are the top spot on the podium, we're going to have an Amazon gift card for you. And you can send an email here to ebtsoyp@gmail.com. And then we will make sure we get that gift card transferred to your classroom. So there's the email. You can find it in the recording again, of course, but we have it there at the bottom of the screen. I think we're ready to start today's Kahoot. So I'm going to switch back to the game screen. And remember, you have 20 seconds to answer each question. The faster you can put that right answer in, the more points you're going to get. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. And we have a multiple choice. How many islands in the Canaries? Was it 3? Was it 5? Was it 8? Or was it 10? So how many islands? 3, 5, 8, or 10? A couple more seconds to get that answer in. All right, we learned from Jaime today there are 8 main islands in the Canaries, and most of our crew went with 8. Good job. We've got the super bison holding down that top spot, and we are going into a true and false question. The Canary Islands are volcanic islands. Is that true or is that false? Are the Canary Islands volcanic islands? True or false? Got about 10 seconds to get your answer locked in for this one. The Canary Islands, are they volcanic? All right, that is absolutely true. We were learning so much of those islands have been shaped from eruptions over periods of time, and it's something that people living in the Canaries have to be aware of and are able to kind of cope with and live with in their everyday lives. All right. Super Bison's holding down that top spot. Let's go to our next question. This is another multiple choice. How many species of beaked whale are there? Was it 10? Was it 15? Was it 23? Or was it 31? So we have to think back to when we were talking to Natacha. All right. Okay. So we had a good mixture of answers there, but the answer is in fact 23. We learned today there are 23 species of those beaked whales. Let's see if that shook up our leaderboard. It did. The aquatic bee has jumped into first place. Let us go to a true and false question. Beaked whales are easy to tag. Is that true or is that false? Are those beaked whales easy to tag? True or false? We saw those tags. We saw those suction cups. We saw that they use that pole to try and get it onto the side or the back of the beaked whale. Are those easy? Is it easy to do? All right, so Natacha said that's absolutely false. First, it's hard to find them. And then to get that tag, to get the boat close enough, get in that right spot and get the tag on the whale is not an easy thing to do. So the aquatic bee holding down that top spot. We have one more question to wrap up our Kahoot for today. When does the tag release from the whale? So the tag releases automatically after, is it 6 hours? Is it 15 hours? Is it 20 hours? Or is it a full day, 24 hours when that tag is released from the whale? We know we get great information like recordings, and it can tell how deep that the whales have been going, but when is it released? Awesome work, crew. 24 hours is the right answer. Let's take a look at our podium and let's see where things stand. Third place, we have the aquatic bee. In second place, we have the super bison. So we have a new leader here taking it at the very end. In first place, we have the yellow yak. All right, very cool. Thank you so much for playing along with us. And again, a huge shout out to Natacha and Jaime for the amazing connections from the field today and learning about the awesome conservation work that they are doing. So if you were our winner today, do email us at ebtsoyp@gmail.com and we will get your answer in we will get that prize heading your way. So there we go. Thank you so much. Now we're going to move on to another segment here where we last week we did our first experiment, and that experiment was focused on looking at how shells dissolve in the water. This was an amazing experiment that we did. And those results, you still have one more week to upload those results. So if you visit the DARWIN200 website, you can always find the recording of the instructions for each experiment. You can find an instruction PDF that explains how to do it. And then you have 2 weeks to upload your prizes for a chance at 3 50-pound gift cards for Amazon. So ocean acidification was our theme last week, and you still have one more week to upload your results and the answers to those questions. This week's experiment was going to deal with natural selection. So Stewart made an amazing video for us to kind of demonstrate how natural selection works. So let's take a little look at that video now. And then Stewart has a little surprise for us. So we're going to go visit Stewart shortly and see what that surprise is.
Charles Darwin is best known for his work concerning the theory of evolution. He published a very, very important book called On the Origin of Species that advocated that the species that we see today are the result of natural selection, a process by which the population has changed through time through selective processes. I'm going to show you how that works. This is a massive oversimplification, but in essence, the principle of natural selection is relatively simple to understand. Imagine a rainforest with a population of insects. Within that population of insects, some are yellow, some are pink, some are red, some are blue, and some are green. There might be a predator, in this case, a lizard, that wants to eat those insects. Which ones do you think it will eat first? Well, it's probably going to eat the ones that it can see first. So these yellow ones are probably going to be gobbled up first. So let's get rid of them. Then maybe these pink ones here. Then last of all, perhaps these blue ones and the red one there. It's less likely to eat the green ones because they're camouflaged and hidden. Over millions and millions of years, these green insects are more likely to survive and more likely to reproduce, so will become more and more numerous, whereas the other coloured ones are less likely to survive and less likely to reproduce, so over time will gradually be replaced or at least become less numerous. As a whole, the population then will trend towards these green individuals. This was the basic idea that Charles Darwin put forward, and it explains how animals and plants, and in fact all organisms, change and evolve through time. This simple principle explains why you have different organisms in different habitats around the world. So for example, on the forest floor, there's different ecological dynamics. In this case, the green insects are less likely to survive because in this particular habitat, their green coloration makes them stand out. So our predator would eat them first, whereas it's more likely to not see the black insects and this reddish brownish one. So they're more likely to survive. So that's why you have differences between the green forest and the brown leaf litter on the forest floor in different groups of animals and plants living in those different habitats. This simple idea explains why you have very different groups of organisms in different ecosystems in different parts of the world. Take, for example, deserts. In deserts, it's not just the coloration of organisms that determine whether or not they survive. Deserts, by their very nature, are defined by their aridity, their dryness. In some deserts, only a few millimeters of rain fall each year. So the animals and plants that survive in deserts have had to evolve very specialized ways of surviving in these extremely dry conditions. Many of the plants have succulent stems that can store water. One of the most highly adapted are these quiver trees from Namibia. They have white bark that reflects the intense heat of the sun. Their big swollen stems can store a lot of water when the rains do come, and that can carry them through the dry periods. And their small succulent foliage loses very little water in the dry desert air. The animals are similarly adapted. For example, these dune beetles can actually collect water droplets from mist that rolls in over the desert on some nights each year. So this simple and elegant solution explains why we have such an incredible profusion and diversity of life on planet Earth. During his visit to the Galapagos Islands, Charles Darwin noticed that many of the different finch species had very different shaped beaks. Why do you think the shape of the finch beaks vary so greatly? What is it about their beaks that enable them to survive? Write down your thoughts and upload your ideas via the DARWIN200 website to take part in this week's competition. We'll go through the answers in 2 weeks' time. Good luck and see you next week.
All right, so another very cool demonstration to go along with our first experiment, the ocean acidification experiment. Hopefully your classrooms have been able to try it at the back of your classroom, but you still do have a week now to give it a try, answer those questions, and submit your answers. Remember that the recording of the instructions is going to be on the DARWIN200 website. An instruction PDF will be there as well. And then you have 2 weeks to upload your results. So for the first experiment, the ocean acidification one, it is 1 more week to get your results in. And now you have 2 weeks to get your results for this natural selection activity. And just a reminder, it is darwin200.com. Visit that website and you can find those recordings. We're also going to get them up on the DARWIN200 YouTube channel as well. So you can find the recordings in 2 spaces if you want to visit the YouTube page. Now, I did mention we have Stu joining us. I could see Stu backstage in a car doing some running. He's made it to another area in Tenerife. So let's bring Stu in with us right now. Hey, Stu, how are you?
Hello, hi. Since we last spoke, I ran off the ship, legged it through the city, and I'm now by a very, very special tree. as Jaime kindly mentioned in his talk, there's some amazing, unique endemic plants. Endemic means that they occur nowhere else in the world. And one of them is called the dragon tree, or Dracaena draco. And there's an amazing one right here. It's called a dragon tree because its sap is bright red, like blood. It was actually different species, and there's at least 3 species, and they were from different islands close to Tenerife. For example, Cape Verde and also Socotra on the other side of Africa. And they're actually traded all across the Mediterranean, used in alchemy and many other purposes. But their weird branches that are so highly divided are just so unusual from most other trees that occur in this region. They really are pretty spectacular. If you look here, they often are described like flying saucers because they have a consistent canopy right up at the top there. Oops, sorry, let me get my phone right up there. You see that canopy? And this is one of the tree species that live in this very special ecosystem here on the Canary Islands called thermophile forest. So we're really lucky to see this beautiful tree today. So yeah, it's called a dragon tree because of that blood red sap. So it's a pretty cool tree.
All right, Stu, that is so cool. Thank you so much for getting to that tree because, seeing these amazing species and getting to experience the talks from the conservationists, you're just in the pine forest at higher elevation. That's what the world's most exciting classroom is all about, is bringing this into classrooms and giving students a chance to see some of these amazing things that we get to see on the Darwin 200.
Absolutely. And next week, you can see some of the Darwin Leader projects. We're going to try and bring some in as well to interview them. And you can speak to them and ask them questions and see some of the films, the photo essays, and the reports they've written. So next week, we've got a really exciting program as well.
All right. So we're going to take a little time to do a quick Q&A action. So if you're tuning in live via YouTube, use that chat sidebar and send us in some questions. We have a special treat. We have Mrs. Skaggs' class backstage with us today. They're in San Antonio, Texas. Some 3rd graders. We're going to give them a chance to ask a couple questions. Stu, how does that sound?
Of course, with pleasure.
All right. Hey, Texas, how are we doing today? All right. Have you with us today. Now we're going to take a couple questions. If you guys have a couple questions about the Darwin 200, about the ship, about the whales, anything you want, you can ask a couple questions.
Okay, who has a question? Athena, go over here in the camera.
Yeah, come up nice and close and nice and loud for us.
Right here.
Why does that whale look kind of like a dolphin?
That's a really, really good question. It's a deep diving whale. It's like a beach whale. It's a very specialized body that allows it to deep dive really, really, really deep. You might be more familiar with the baleen whales. These are the really big whales that filter feed. Or the beach whales have teeth. They look a little bit like dolphins because they have to swim really, really deep to go and find their prey, which can be fish or, as Natacha mentioned earlier, big squid. And here in the Canary Islands, it's an area known for its giant squid. So the pilot whales and other species of toothed whales here swim to really deep depths, as much as 800, 900 meters. So in feet, something like 2,500 feet. They can go down in 10, 15 minutes to that depth and hunt their food. So that's one of the reasons why they look a bit like dolphins. They've got to have streamlined bodies that are very good at swimming fast and going down deep into the world's oceans.
All right, that was a great question.
That was a good question.
Is there going to be another Kahoot?
So that's a great question. Every week we're doing the world's most exciting class. Every week we're going to have another Kahoot event. So yeah, if you join in throughout the school year, we're going to be doing a live event every single week. Some weeks maybe even 2.
¿Tienen preguntas sobre esto? Questions about the presentation? Okay, the last question. Okay. One more question. Have a seat.
How long can they live?
Which the whales?
Yeah.
The whales live for decades. Each species is a little bit different. Many of the deep diving beaked whales can certainly live 40, 50, 60 years. Some of the great baleen whales are thought to live even longer. So it does depend a little bit on the species and which part of the world they live in, but certainly decades, certainly many, many, many decades in length.
They're lucky.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Skaggs' class, thank you so much for joining us from Texas. As school comes back in Canada and the US and the UK, we'll have more classrooms sneaking in backstage to join us in that way. And then, of course, any number of classrooms and general public, anybody interested can tune in live to events on YouTube or check the recordings of the world's most exciting classroom if you couldn't make it live. So we have Mr. Hancock joining us. He is an educator here in Canada, in Ontario. His class isn't back yet, but he's in his classroom getting ready. And he wants to know about the dragon tree. Are they only found in the Canaries, or are there a few other spots that they can be found?
So they're very unusual distribution. They occur across the north of Africa, on Socotra, which is an island in the Gulf of Aden, over on the other side of Africa. They occur in the Canary Islands and in Cape Verde. My understanding is this particular species, which is Dracaena draco, occurs only here in the Canary Islands. There's a different species on Cape Verde, and certainly the one on Socotra is definitely a different one. So they're very localized and very, very specialized to these dry island environments and dry North African landscapes. They're very specialized trees. And you can see it from their leaves. They're very drought adapted. The reason why they form this canopy is so that the foliage is collectively sheltered and protected to some extent. They have tough, leathery leaves that are resistant to the sun, very thick, waxy cuticles on the leaves, and a very small amount of foliage per tree. I mean, look, there's not many really leaves up there at all, just on the very edges of those stems. And all of those elements are factors to enable it to survive in a very, very dry environment. So they're highly drought adapted.
All right. And so one more question here I'm going to grab from the chat, Stu, and then we're going to do our curiosity of the week. So we have a master's student who just graduated from wildlife conservation, and they're curious about opportunities to join the expedition. So I think maybe if we could talk about just briefly how someone could apply to be a Darwin leader, because that could be an excellent opportunity.
That's a great idea. That's a wonderful question. So we're looking for the world's best young conservationists. So unfortunately, you do have to be 18 and above. But if you want to come on the ship in the ports, we're looking for conservationists that have done amazing things. People that are born with that burning flame inside of them to change the world. We're selecting 200 of these incredible young people and bringing them to the ports that Charles Darwin visited to learn new skills and have new experiences working in the field with some of the most incredible conservationists on Earth. And the idea is they'll take those skills back and use them for the rest of their careers, the next 50 years, to help change the world. So those are the Darwin leaders. We're also looking for researchers, and Joe is in charge of selecting the researchers. So I don't want to step too much on his toes, but if you're interested in doing research on the ships, there's that opportunity as well. And of course, you can sail on the ship. It's open to the public to sail as well, but on the voyage legs between the ports. And then, of course, last but not least, every week for 100 weeks, we've got the world's most exciting classroom event. So even if you can't join in person at the ship, you can join digitally every week for the next, well, we've done 2. This is our second event. So for the next 98 weeks coming up. So quite a lot to in store.
All right. Excellent. Well, Stu, just before I play the curiosity of the week videos, one more question came in that I thought was worth sneaking in. So Bill wants to know, the sap appears red from the dragon tree. Do you know offhand what chemical or what's present to make it that color?
I'm afraid I actually don't know. I do know it was originally used in roselyn, the resin that was used for violin strings. It was highly, highly prized. There are stories of it going right the way back into medieval times, being traded across the Mediterranean. It was sold and said to be dragon's blood, which is hence the name of the tree. I mean, obviously that's not true, but nevertheless, yeah, it was at some points worth its weight in gold. I think it is a little bit wrapped up in legend and myth and so forth. But to answer the question, I'm afraid I don't actually know the chemical that's in the resin. It really is bright red, though. And if you look, well, it'll be a bit hard for you to see. But even if you look on the dead leaves, at the base of the dead leaves, they're red. And I'll do my very best. Look up at the bottom, like the bottom of the leaves. You can see they're bright reddish orange. That's the traces of the sap. It's probably a bit tricky for you to see, but if I go under the tree.
Yeah, we can see it, Stu, especially on the one that you were just showing. It was really bright orange. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so you can imagine when you cut the tree, obviously you shouldn't cut the trees down, but if you were to, and obviously that has happened in the past, the tree then bleeds this bright red, bizarre sap. So it's really, really extraordinary. It's a very unusual tree.
Okay, very cool. Well, we're going to play our Curiosity of the Week video before we sign off for today. Now, if you were tuning in last week, you'll remember we saw these beautiful rings of shells. So let's first find out what those were. So let me share my, oops, that's the wrong option here. Let me share my screen here and let's find out what the answer to last week was.
Week, we asked you what these objects here are. It would be easy to guess that they were necklaces or some kind of jewelry, but they're not. The answer is shell money. They come from Papua New Guinea, specifically an island called New Britain off the coast of Papua New Guinea. And still to this very day, these amazing bands of shells are still used as currency, particularly in local markets for trading and bartering. So if you guessed shell money, you were right.
All right. And of course, we can't end off without a new Curiosity of the Week. So let me play our next video here, and then I'll tell you how you can send in your answers as well.
Next curiosity is this little creature here. This animal has an amazing story to tell, which we'll explore in next week's session. But your task is to work out what type of creature this is, or what group of animals it belongs to. Send in your answers to info@darwin200.com. Thank you for joining and see you next week.
All right, so there we go. We've got our new Curiosity of the Week. That email there is again at the bottom of the screen for you, classroom@darwin200.com. So send in your answers with what you think the Curiosity of the Week is. And that shell money was so cool. I'm going to bring Stu in one more time. Stu, that shell money is absolutely beautiful. And yeah, I hope some good guesses came in last week.
Absolutely. We had lots of different guesses. A lot of people did think it was a necklace, though, which I'm sorry to say isn't correct. But yeah, I think we did have 2 people that guessed shell money, so they got it absolutely spot on. Do send in your ideas for what that extraordinary creature is that you saw in the last Curiosity of the Week little clip there. We'll reveal what it is and what animal, what group of animals it belongs to. And it's not what you think. It's not. You have a little look in your books and see if you can identify it. It's not what you might imagine. It's a bit of a surprise on that one. So it was lovely speaking to you today from Tenerife.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much. You'll have to say thanks to Jaime and to Natacha. It was so great to have the conservationists joining us and sharing the important work that they're doing. And we can't wait for our next event, which we will blast out through newsletters and emails and social media to make sure we have everybody joining us. And we can't wait to see those Darwin Leader projects, the first ones coming in and completed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for having me today, Joe.
All right. And to wrap up for today, we need to thank our sponsors. This is an incredibly complex expedition, spending 2 years following Darwin's voyage of the Beagle around the world. And without the help of our generous sponsors, it would not be possible. So to end off today's event, I'm going to share a little clip to thank our sponsors who are so important to making the Darwin 200 a reality. All right. Well, thank you so much to our sponsors. Thank you so much to the classrooms and the public who joined us today. Thank you to our conservationists. And we will see you next week for the 3rd episode of the world's most exciting classroom. We are going to sign out for today. Have a great rest of the week, everyone. We'll see you next week.